Hello everybody, so welcome to, I don't know, you can read the title. I don't know exactly what it's gonna be called. It's gonna be something like Random Ramblings, Running Rogues, something like that, I don't know, some random ramblings. Probably gonna be almost completely unedited, maybe. Just gonna make sure that there's no unnecessary audio bleeps or anything like that. But yeah, I do have some topics that I will be rambling about, but you know, I haven't really planned what I will be talking about. But before I actually start to I mean, I already know what I'm gonna do, so I already know how the round's gonna go, so or I kinda do or kinda don't, because this is still gonna be recorded live, so it's gonna be also a little bit on reactions on the games and all that fun stuff. But that's not the point here. So the more interesting thing here will be what I will be talking about. Yeah. So I cannot skip. Okay. Yeah. So, what I've been recently kind of delving into has been a really interesting topic. Well, I mean, interesting topic. It's of course kind of something that everybody kind of has to decide on their own whether it's interesting or not. But it is the phenomena we call qualia. Or we have named qualia. It's a bit of a weird word. Probably, I believe majority of you do not know what that means. And that's kind of gonna be the starting point for this rambling. So, the thing or what qualia is, it's pretty hard to explain, but it's the sensation of experiences. Or, yeah, God, it's gonna be hard to because I haven't done that much studying into it, so it's gonna be pretty hard to explain. But mostly it's gonna be, it's something like, I guess, for example, the color green, or any color for that matter, or the smell, or like what we sense, what our senses tell us, and how that feels to us. For example, a blind person has no sense of the qualia of, well, anything really, or at least majority of the things. For example, they do not recognize the qualia green or any color. So, and it's a really interesting topic to think about, because it is a little bit abstract, that because of course sight is something very personal to everybody, and the way we experience things is very, very personal. But that kind of goes into really weird territory, that the quality is something that we do not know how to measure specifically, because it's mostly how our brains interpret some signals that we receive. Because it's not like we can, like, literally measure the qualia of green, but we do know what specifically causes our brains to experience the qualia called green, and that is of course light that has a certain wavelength. But that's where we kind of get into the other point that's kind of gonna be important in this, or in kind of an interesting introspection topic, and that is that this was basically the reason why I want to talk about it, is because I am colorblind, and that means that I kinda do not recognize the qualia called that most people would say is green or red or brown. At least those are the greatest sources of color blindness for me. So, but it also has something like orange and yellow, and sometimes those combined with red, and sometimes many shades of blue also are mixed in there. But yeah, kind of means that how I personally interpret colors is a little bit more, I guess I could say it's a little bit more subjective, or objective rather, because I don't specifically recognize them in terms of the what do I get? In terms of the whatchamacallit, actual like qualia that I experience, but rather I qualify them in the more, I guess, realistic sense, called in the way that I kind of see them as, you know, actual wavelengths, because, and I handle those, the qualia, as more of a wavelength than anything else. And it's really weird how my brain handles colors, and it's not something that I can specifically explain to anybody, so it's very interesting. I really do like it, but well, like it is a bit of a interesting term for it, but I do like thinking about it at the very least. It's very weird. So, and although the qualia, of course, goes a little bit further than our own perspectives and how our brain just interprets things, because this is something where I once again do have, of course, the reason I wanted to use this as a topic is because I do have some other, let's say, sensory misjudgments, because I do have, of course, I've been treated for psychosis. I have visual and auditory hallucinations, which do mean that I really experience an altered sense of reality, which kind of gives me a bit of a different and special perspective on these things. Not necessarily, or most definitely not better, I would say, but it's very weird. And because that means that I kind of don't believe in my own senses, you could say. Like, the fact that I don't... If I experience something, I'm not immediately going to judge it based on the qualia that my brains communicate to from my senses. So it's an interesting way to think about these things. And while I don't think, like, a lot of you will be able to take a lot out of it, I think it can be somewhat enlightening to think about the perspective that about the subjectivity of reality, and how our sense, like, this goes once again also into I mean, I haven't talked about it a lot on the channel, but I personally have been having to talk a lot or experience a lot of conversation about religion and all that fun stuff, how personal religiosity is, and how subjective it is that some people are, like, religious, and how some are not, and how everybody personally has a different way of experiencing reality. And while some do explain it with some people do explain certain aspects of reality with religions and all that fun stuff, and I don't think there's, of course, nothing like, I mean, I don't personally, I'm not, of course, religious, but as I guess was pretty obvious from what I've been talking about, but I don't think there's anything bad with interpreting reality in the way that most fits your own personality and your own personal alignments, because there's no wrong way to look at reality. I mean, there is, but if it's a functional way of thinking about reality that allows you to handle it more, I guess, constructively, or in a way that is more easily digestible to you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that specifically. And while, of course, if you are going to be talking publicly, it's kind of bad to let your opinions be, let's go with the word toxic. I really don't hope that, or I really dislike when people are being toxic about most of the subjects, so that they are, in the way that they communicate to one another, in the way, like, of course, this is a bit of a cultural dilemma that I personally do like to avoid confrontations a lot, though I do understand why people, or why sometimes open confrontations are not only required but also very useful for communicating ideas. I personally don't like confrontations, but that is very much my own personal preference. And of course I do still get into confrontations, but I personally would like to avoid them as much as possible. Still, uh, these things are really interesting to think about. At least that's what I think. Don't know about all of you, and I don't actually know how long this video will be because I'm gonna still. I don't know exactly how long I'm gonna be talking here. We'll see. I'll talk as long as I have anything to say. So, yeah, I do have other ideas here as well, but the way that. So talking about how we personally, everybody interprets their reality in their own manner, and how, while that can be sometimes a little bit negative, I do believe that majority of the people are still trying to do good and all that stuff. And even if our experiences are very personal and very subjective, I do believe that there are some common things that most likely are just because of evolution. I still do think that those do hold a lot of water, and in the way that they do allow us to... I mean, how could we otherwise communicate about qualia in the way that we can? In a way that we can, like, share ideas and such, and kind of communicate what the main idea and purpose behind those things is. So, I don't know, these things are really weird to think about. Yeah. Now, of course, yeah, this is something I'm gonna be talking about a bit more about solipsism as well here, because it's of course something that I've been talking about, I mean, not on YouTube all that much, I think? I can't remember if I have. I don't think I have, but, it's a bit interesting to think about it, but I don't really... okay, so, sorry, I'm also trying to concentrate on the game, but... I don't think that... I mean, I think there is a lot of weight to solipsism. Let's go with that. And, of course, I should probably explain what that means, or how I at least interpret solipsism. In the way that I interpret solipsism as a philosophical outview on the world, it means... it's a worldview where you don't... or if you're a solipsist, you are kind of disbelieving that anything is real. So, because, I mean, technically speaking, in the way that I'm talking about this topic now, I guess it's been pretty apparent that we cannot exactly, we cannot assure that anything is real. That's the way that our brain works. So but it's like one of those base axioms that we kind of have to just, you know, take for granted, because otherwise, I mean, it's a pointless... It's a pointless topic to, like, seriously talk about, in a way that, or at least... I mean, it can be casually joked about, or you can go into very deep philosophical thought about it, but I don't think it's very useful to just generally talk about it. The fact that we don't know if anything is real, you know, brain in a jar and matrix and all that kind of fun stuff. Those are hypotheses that can be correct. But, of course, we do not know for certain, and I don't think there's a lot of point to thinking about it, but I do think there's a certain amount of value in realizing that, at least, of course, this is something that I personally hold, so there's certain value in the fact that, in the way that you can approach reality in the way that nothing might be real. Not even your own existence. And even though this is a very solipsistic and, for some, very pessimistic way to think about the world, I personally think there is some value to it, in the way that it... Of course, this is gonna go back in the way that it kind of grants a devil-may-care attitude in the... devil-may-care worldview, in the way that you can just think about the world about, oh, nothing is real, so why would anything I do matter? And you can think about it in the way that, oh, if nothing really matters, I really shouldn't be too worried about the future and only concentrate on enjoying the experiences that I have, no matter how false those may be. Now, of course, I don't think this is a good point of view for everybody, but this is something that does help me personally. But of course, I am a bit of a unique, and well, I would say that most people are a very unique case. Not everybody, obviously. A lot of people are very common in the way that they can be reasoned with in a layman's terms. And a lot of people are not very deep philosophical thinkers, so they don't require, like, they don't suffer from Weltschmerz, you know, world hurt, so that it's not really necessary for them to kinda come to grips with the fact that they perhaps just don't need to, they don't need to necessarily grapple with the fact that their existence in the grand cosmic sense is pointless. And even though for me that is kind of important, I can easily just grapple with that in the way that, you know, technically speaking, as a solipsism, or like solipsist, that I just say that, oh, well, if nothing is pointless, that means that I don't really need to, I mean, I do need to care about the consequences, even if it's just a simulation or something like that, or even if reality isn't real. I do know that there are some consequences for it, even if my own being isn't real. And while it's very weird to explain, and of course this is something that I mean, I'm having trouble just explaining it in here, because I don't exactly use this kind of method of thought, but it can be somewhat comforting to think that why shouldn't I just go for it, you know? And it kind of allows you to just freely try stuff. Of course, you know, trying to be realistic and all that, so I don't think anyone should just be completely, fully solipsistic all the time, because I don't really think that's a safe way to think about things. But I do see a point in using it as a way to relieve your own tension. Although, of course, a little bit weird, but still, I think there's some validity to it. So, it's an interesting way to think about it. And this is one of the ways that I have kind of helped myself come to terms with the fact that I personally do lack a huge control over my reality, in the way that not only my biology prevents it, and my reality prevents it, and my own mentality prevents me from acting fully independently. But it doesn't necessarily hurt me that much that I am restricted in that way, which is somewhat comforting, honestly, to think about. The fact that, yeah, no, of course I cannot do everything, but should I really, realistically speaking, care about that? I don't know if anybody else can get any kind of satisfaction from that, but I personally can. Now, of course, once again, I'm just gonna reiterate it all the freaking time, so I hope I'm not gonna get too repetitive on this video, but yeah, well, if it's a point of view, or if it's a line of thought that really just causes you, like, grief and doesn't help you, I mean, well, then it's not a good way to think about things. Like, harmful ideologies and such should be very much just abandoned, honestly. And nobody should really be thinking about things or focusing too much on things that cause them grief, because it's pointless and it's just meaningless. And while, of course, these things can, like, kind of give you some momentary stress and pain, I don't think there's anything necessarily bad about it. I mean, a healthy amount of stress is fine, and even though this can be a little bit more than healthy, I don't think there's anything bad about being, like, aware of one's own limits and trying to apply a little bit more critical thought into the fact that you cannot exactly control your own life completely, or well, for some, a lot. But in the way that this can be a little bit harmful thought, I do think that in that way one should kind of keep in mind that, yeah, maybe I don't have control over my life. Maybe there's not a lot of things I can do about my life, but maybe that doesn't need to, you know, limit me. And one should kind of just like let go and just, I mean, these are pretty roundabout ways to think about the fact that one should just let go and live life to the fullest. So it's a very interesting way to think about this. So, and this is a way that one can easily just live with themselves and the fact that they lack control, and it allows one to more easily come to terms with the fact that how limited life in reality is and how limited one's own control over their life is. Because if we, I mean, I am a pretty hard deterministic, or I think that my worldview is a pretty hard in determinism, and this kind of helps me come to terms with that. So it's, of course this is just something for me. So I don't think it's necessarily helpful for everybody, but I do think for those who do suffer from this kind of like anguish from the fact that they lack control, I think it's a lot easier to just think about that. Technically speaking, there's no observable reality, and one should just calm down and allow themselves to enjoy life to the fullest. So, I don't know if I'm explaining it that well. I hope I am. I mean, it's not like it's the easiest concept to think about, so I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about. I don't know, and it's a bit hard to come to grasp terms with that. I don't know if I'm even explaining it so properly that anybody can even understand this, but you know, it's kind of it's really, this is actually a pretty fun thing to think about. So, oh my god, I can just bullshit about this for quite a long while. So, I don't really mind it, and in the way that I personally do kind of handle reality as a very objective way, but in the same way as completely objective in the way that nothing exactly can ever be proven to be completely real. I do think that gives a little bit of a refreshing view on the world in the way that you don't exactly need to be realistic with the world, and you can just think about some very imaginary scenarios. Of course, this kind of is something that just helps me with just writing and all that fun stuff. So I don't know if it's something that most people even kind of necessarily need to grasp with. But yeah, I mean, it can. I do honestly believe that this kind of line of thought can most likely help somebody. Though I don't know exactly how many it can help. But, you know, I don't know. I do think that it can help somebody to view the world as life as a very, you know, completely subjective, even though very few most of our experiences are, of course, subjective, but many of our experiences are also very subjective. They are subjective, but technically speaking, we can have a very objective and rational view of the world. I don't know. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that I kind of lack any purpose in the world or anything like that. Even if I would say that I would lack control in my life, it really doesn't mean that I, like, lose hope or anything like that. Au contraire, mon ami. I really never kind of, because I never kind of had that kind of illusion, in a way, that I would be completely the master of my own destiny. But kind of just a healthy sense of apathy for that kinda, I think, kinda makes it a lot more bearable to think about the whole world in the way that, yeah, maybe, you know, maybe life sucks. Maybe most of life isn't real. But does it ultimately matter? So, and if it doesn't matter, what's going to stop me? The only thing that's gonna stop me is myself, and I'm not gonna let myself stop me from having fun. So, yeah. I mean, once again, I'm going into a bit more of a different, like, a different sort of a different philosophical point of view, a bit more like, I guess, hedonistic point of view here, and I think that is sometimes actually kind of a good idea, because I mean, we are very much just biological machines, so no matter how much I just try to bullshit about the fact that nothing is important and life is meaningless, blah blah blah, all that kind of stupid stuff. I mean, you know, ultimately it still is pretty nice to, you know, pleasure is very good. So I think hedonism is somewhat justifiable, of course, in healthy quantities and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, of course, it's what everybody is the only you can tell yourself what you really should and want to do. So, like, don't. I don't think anybody should probably listen to me as any kind of like any kind of philosopher or anything like that. But I don't know. I hope somebody can get something out of these kind of random ramblings, and I think there's a lot of potential to get something out of this, because it's not like philosophy is completely pointless, and especially comparing one's own experiences to another's can be a little bit eye-opening at the very least, and especially in my case, or at least in, I mean, it can be very helpful to get bit of a different point of view from people who either have very similar experiences to you, for example, people who are depressed or who suffer from psychosis or those kind of stuff. But in the more positive point of view, you can also kind of enlighten yourself by listening to other people's points of view and other the point of view of people who have experienced very different things to you. And that's one of the main reasons why I do really like globalization, and the fact that I do have this little YouTube page is that I can actually, like, you know, realistically communicate to a pretty wide audience and a lot of different people. So it allows me to experience a very huge amount of different points of views and different walks of life, people from different walks of life, and it allows for a very wide array of experiences. So I don't know. And for that I am really grateful for, well, not, of course, not only to the people who watch these videos and who talk with me about this stuff, and how we personally, of course, everybody interprets, well, usually just anime, but sometimes other things, how we talk about these things differently and how we think about them in a different way. But this is also something why I do like talking to a lot of different people, and why I'm very glad about the life I have lived, that I've been able to talk to so many people in so many different walks of life. And you know, that's something that I do like. So I kind of hope that allows that kind of point of view kind of can I hope I could bestow this kind of point of view to everybody, in the way that the kind of point of view that all's a life a theater, and we can all gain something from one another, even if sometimes those experiences are something that will most likely never be useful for us, but allowing us to see different points of view can definitely help us, if nothing else, be more enlightened. So although enlightenment is a bit of a weird word, but you know, still, I hope I kinda explained this in a way that at least was interesting. or informative or entertaining, something. I hope anybody got something out of this, so because I do like this kind of way to just randomly talk about random topics. I did have a little bit of thought about this beforehand about what I would be talking about, but of course I think it's pretty obvious that I didn't really consider it all that much. Still, it was pretty enjoyable, so half an hour. Hey, that's pretty good. I think that's gonna be a good point for me to stop that conversation here. And I don't know. I hope I'm perhaps satisfied with this and I can upload this safely and all that fun stuff. So if you're hearing this, that means I'm probably satisfied with this recording. Yeah. Just wanted to talk about random things. I hope this was interesting. Leave your thoughts. Yeah, I hope you gained something from this. I apologize if it was very rambly, but that's kind of the point, so yeah. Thank you. You can move out. Have a great day and stay awesome. And like I kinda alluded to, thank you very much for everything, honestly. So have a great day.